Hello and welcome to All Stats Aren't We, a podcast in which Leeds fans cast their combined eye over goings on at Ellen Road, giving scrutiny to the underlying statistics and tactical footings at work at Leeds United. I'm Adam Elliott and I'm joined today by Martin Riley and Elland Eagles Under-10s Player of the Season in 2003-2004. It's Thomas Hosty-Kundell. Tom, how are you doing? We're back.
Yeah, we're back. Let's go. First game of the season. I am ready. I have eaten my Nando's chicken and sweet potato fries. I'm ready. I'm raring to go. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm also ready, raring to go. I don't know if the team's ready and raring to go, especially in attack, but we could talk about that in a minute. But yeah, I'm feeling good. I've myself had leftover lasagna heated up, and it was genuinely pretty good for some leftovers that were heated up. So I very much enjoyed that. Martin, how are you doing? What have you had for your first tea time preview meal of the season? I'll probably ask you this 100 times. Not quite.
I am doing good. I've had a pretty chill day. Managed to get a half day off work just because it was really quiet, so just let some people go home early. So that was nice, which gave me extra time to prepare for tonight. I've had a hosty special for tea tonight. I had pasta bolognese, not quite spaghetti bolognese, not a true hosty special.
That might be changing up this season anyway. I get the feeling I might be doing a lot of chicken and rice. I'm training for comps. I'm taking competition for weightlifting a bit more seriously again this year. So I even had chicken and rice, I think, 3 out of 4 meals over 2 days last week.
Not rice and a fish cake.
No, rice and a steak, though. Did have rice and 2 steaks, though, the other day as well. Bit
Excellent.
of soy sauce. We're off.
So the Jack Harrison diet you're on then?
Yeah, man's going to be ripped.
And that's very apt based on who we're playing to talk about Jack Harrison. We also have another former Everton player to talk about as well, who might well be joining Jack Harrison at the club there. So we'll get into some news now. Pretty sure everyone listening knows what we're talking about. At time of recording, not actually announced as a Leeds United player yet, but it sounds like he's going to be by probably tomorrow or the day after, which is that Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I'm going to start with you, Hosty. He is someone we've been linked with by Ornstein. It looks like it's happening. What are your initial thoughts on it?
Yeah, he supposedly potentially had the medical this morning at the time of recording, which is Thursday, I think, is kind of what I read. Look, it's not, I don't think any of us will sugarcoat that it's not our first choice. It's not the optimal signing that we were hoping to get at 9. I think I've had to take a look at it from the point of view that we were looking at someone like Muniz, someone like maybe Tieno Barry, who has joined Everton, as being the players that we'd be after in this position. Muniz looks like he's going to the Champions League. Barry's gone to a team who have been established in the Premier League since it formed. You know, that's the difference of where we're at now. And we've discussed before, you know, two seasons of relegation sides have been the teams that came up the year before, right? So where does that market lead us? So I looked at the players who came up who have joined the teams that have come up in those positions, and you've got Armando Broja and Mark Gui. I'm not entirely sure. Probably Hui because it's a G in Catalonia or something like that. But yeah, you know, you're looking there at £20 million for Broja, who I think is a good player, but he's had his issues over 2 years with injuries as well, not really performed fully. He's only really done it for half a season for Southampton when he was on loan there. Hui or Gui is very unknown. Clearly a big talent from what we've all heard. Can he step up to the Premier League? Can he be that man to lead the line for a team? We've gone out and got a player who I think on his day we all assume he can be a top half 9 when he's fit and firing. That's where obviously the questions come in on whether he's fit enough, whether we can keep him fit enough. But from those 3, I think it's probably actually still the best deal. And that's the market which I'm kind of having to judge it against. I know your concerns regarding the fact we've signed Mecha and Calvert-Lewin. And I totally understand those reservations and how it can't look like a good deal or doesn't look like a good deal. But I think it's going to lend us to being able to build the squad in a different way to maybe how any of us expected it when we've done our scouting pods, just because we have to cover for that as well. I'm a fan. I'm not a fan of it. I understand it, and I can get on board with it from that point of view. But yeah, it's definitely not the first choice.
Martin?
I like a lot of what Hossie said there, and yeah, my first impressions when we were initially, I think, tentatively linked with him, it was like, what, about a week or so ago, potentially, maybe a little bit more than that, and my first impression was, like, no, we can't go from Muniz or Tieno Barry to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who's broken. And then when it started stepping up a bit more, I looked into him a bit more and just checked to see what he's been up to for the past couple of years. And he'd actually played more than what I thought he had played. He wasn't quite as broken as what I was expecting. Don't get me wrong, he's still got injury problems and he did miss a good chunk of last season. But he has started 45 games in the last 2 seasons. So that's why my hesitance was maybe tempered a little bit. But like you, Hosty, he's definitely not the ideal signing, but I do understand the logic behind it. It is the right type of profile that we need, someone who can be an outlet, someone who is strong, can win aerial battles, can be effective in both boxes, is a good presser. So he ticks a lot of boxes in terms of the player that he is. It's just that availability and how often he is going to be available. There's a good chance that he picks up a bad injury and misses most of the season. That's definitely a possibility, and a similar possibility also is there for the Nature as well. So we've got two players in our 9, the 2 profiles which we want. They're both similar profiles in the way they play, and there is a possibility that they could miss a lot of the season. So it definitely isn't ideal. But I've done some watching. I won't spoil too much, but he doesn't look a broken player in the way I saw him play. He's still very physical. He's still very quick. He can press. He can do all the things that I would have associated with Calvert-Lewin. So yeah, he's not the most attractive or sexy signing, but
he's quite attractive, to be fair.
Yes, he is. In him himself, he is very, very attractive, and he's got some good fashion taste as well. But in terms of the optics of it, I can understand why a lot of fans are disappointed in this signing, because we've been linked with a £35 million striker, and then we've gone down to a free transfer for Calvert-Lewin. That's never going to get people excited. But let's see what they do in other positions to try to make up for this fact. There should be still quite a lot of money available to spend. 35 million, which we didn't spend on Muniz, 30-odd million, which we didn't spend on Paixão. So there is clearly money there to be spent. So if we can bring in profiles which will make up for maybe Calvert-Lewin not being available for periods, maybe a winger who can play as a striker, or just someone who can get goals even when Calvert-Lewin isn't being clinical, because he's not, and he never really has been. If you give him a lot of chances, he will score a fair amount of goals, but he does need probably more chances than what some strikers would to get a decent goal tally. Similar to Bamford in a respect to his finishing. But yeah, I'll let Adam have his thoughts on it now.
Yeah, I mean, the major point is the money saved. You'd hope that now unlocks us the ability to sign a really fun winger, maybe even a fun 10. For people that think we're going to sign another striker, I really don't think that's going to happen, unless for some reason we sold Joel Piroux. I don't think that's going to happen either. So it's probably going to be rocking with 3. Like you said, you kind of got a guy that's going to get injuries guaranteed pretty much in Mecha, and then another one in Calvert-Lewin. That said, like, if we're starting those 2 in majority of games as the number 9, one of them at least, let's say like 33 of the league games, that'd probably be okay. But can we guarantee that we have them both, or at least one of them, available at all times in that instance? I don't know. It might be that both are injured at points together, and then we're in a really dire situation. We've just gone through years of Patrick Bamford injuries, and that's not a criticism of Pat, but we then replace him with profiles that are nice, but profiles that are very similar in terms of they just get injuries. And I don't really get that. I felt like going into this summer, I wanted us to really nail goalkeeper 10 and 9, probably goalkeeper and 9 the most. because it felt like those were the biggest difference makers. Like last season, I think in centre-back, full-back, wingers and midfielders, we were the best team in the league in those areas, not just in terms of like personnel either, but in terms of how we were coached for the most part. It all kind of it fit, it worked. But I didn't really like at the top and bottom of the pitch what was going on. I like Perry enough, but I'm really not sure about Metcha and Calvert-Lewin. I probably would have signed one of them, but not both. But like, I kind of also understand that why would Calvert-Lewin come here if he wasn't going to be the main man? I don't see why he would, to be fair. If he's going to be a backup player, he can do that on a bench. There were other interested clubs. Earlier in the summer, I've definitely heard about Newcastle at one point were considering him as an option to replace Callum Wilson. So just as an example, and a few others probably as well. We have actually been linked for a while, but you probably both didn't know that. We were linked way back at the start of the summer, kind of briefly. And then it went away, and it always looked like it was going to be a Muniz or it was going to be some other kind of younger profile of player that wasn't injury prone. And that's my concern. It's the injuries more than anything, because I do think he's a good profile in terms of the fact that he's a bit of a battering ram. He doesn't just need to be a player. His two best seasons are 16 and 13 goals in the Premier League, which is really, really good. Back-to-back seasons, he did that. I don't think he's broken more than about 7 since then, 7 or 8 in the league anyway. He might have done in all competitions. So that's not great. But then the profile fit means you probably are going to get more out of a winger or a number 10. And it's probably quite likely that our top scorer next season, if Calvert-Lewin's in the team, isn't him, and it's one of the 3 behind him. It's probably likely to be that, and he's going to make a lot of chances for them just in terms of his presence. He is a bit of a bastard, and we've said we wanted that. He seems like a nice lad, but he's a bit of a bastard on the pitch. Like he'll put himself about, certainly. So I like that. And then the other concern, which I'm actually less bothered by than the injuries, is the output in terms of how much he's underperformed his expected goals numbers. He, over the last 4 seasons, has put up 23.1 XG per FB ref and scored 12 goals in the league. So nearly half. And that just given me flashbacks to certain Mr. Patrick Bamford. And I don't love that. I don't know what you would set as a realistic target for Calvert-Lewin, but I'd hope that he got at least 10. But one of our other 3 behind him maybe gets 12 or 13. Yes, Hosty.
Yeah, I think like if we'd outlaid money on this transfer, as in paid Everton for him, I'd have loads of issues with it.
Like Broya for Burnley.
Yeah,
and
like the
20 million
exact
quid.
The exact sort of concerns that you've got. I'm happy. That's where, like, because it's a free, and I know that it won't exactly obviously be free. They'll be signing on fees and stuff like that, and maybe
he'll be one of our highest paid players.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, but for that reason, like, the deal isn't too much. I'm like, okay, in the similar way to how we've all said, hopefully it means we can go big elsewhere. With regards to like your goal concerns, I'm wondering if that also comes from, and again now this is maybe the other disadvantage of this, from his stop-starting injuries. Like, we know that Pat needs to get a run, or would like a run of games, and that's when he starts to improve on those numbers, when he gets a bit of game time into him, and I guess maybe a lack of fluidity within his game time and how much he's played could be why those numbers are like they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And just again to reiterate, like I want to look beyond the goals, which is why I don't hate this signing. I just don't really like it, because I don't think you can hang your hat on him to score enough or be fit enough either. It's both those things a little bit. It's more the fitness, like I say. But like when he is fit, you've got a big 6'2", 6'3" battering ram of a 9 who's pretty strong, who's pretty quick, who's pretty secure with the ball. That is exactly the kind of player you want to spearhead your attack. And he's 28, so he's in his prime, he's in his peak age years. So I hope he can stay fit. I hope we can get 25 league starts out of him. That might be pushing it, but hopefully we can. And if we can, we probably do all right in enough of those games. He's not going to get roughed up by Virgil van Dijk that easily. He's going to put himself about in that game. So I don't really see any centre-back in the league being able to handle him when he plays at his absolute best. And even when he doesn't, he's still going to help the team. So I've been quite positive there, but I am still quite down on this. I still think it's a big worry with Metcha, who I like as well. I think he's a good profile, but I don't know. Feels a risk to have 2 in the same position. I think we went into the summer expecting maybe we might sign a couple of injury-prone players, but maybe in a couple of different positions, so it wouldn't be so problematic. But having this, and it's not like we're not short of injury-prone players in the squad already, like Byram and Strauch a little bit, and I can't think right now. Ampadu last season even was injury-prone a little bit. He had a pretty sparkling record prior to that, so there's a few worries there already, but hopefully it's a bit easier to manage him, and hopefully we can manage him because we've got Mecha, and so like he's had Beto to rotate with Everton, and that was probably useful in the last couple of years. Hopefully Mecha, and I'll say Pirot as well, but I think he would be better deeper this season. I do think he'd be better as a 10 option. Then hopefully we'll be all right if we've got all of that. I think that's enough on that. Do we want to talk all the transfers, or do we want to wait for things to become more concrete? We've been linked with Noah Okafor from AC Milan today. We've been linked with James Justin quite a bit recently. I've actually been one of the people leading that story. Do we want to talk about either of them, or do we want to just wait?
Does that class as a name drop, or does that class as like a job drop?
Job drop.
Right. Job drop.
Yeah.
It's a humble brag.
Yeah, humble brag. That's the one that I'm looking for. Yeah.
Do either of you want to talk about those, or do we want to just talk about
Let's get into Everton. I don't know anything about either of them, really.
I agree, guys. Well done. Right, on to business then. So, we're here today to discuss the opening game of our Premier League season after 2 years away against David Moyes' Tricky Toffees. And as you might have all seen from the title, Martin spoke to an Everton fan in prep for this one, which we'll play for you right now.
Hello, I'm Martin. And I'm joined today by Joel Parker, football writer for Between the Posts and founder of Toffee Analysis. First things first, Joel, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing very well, thank you. I've actually had the last few weeks really staying away from the football. Ideally, I mean, I was covering the Inter games at the Club World Cup, but after that point, kind of stepped away from overly scrutinising footballers and what they're doing, but. It's I've still been following Everton and watching a few pre-season games now and then. So, it's nice to have that little occasion where you put your mind to something else.
Yeah, indeed, I can relate to that. Sometimes you get a bit too invested in your own club, and it's good to step back a bit. But that's how us football obsessives are, I guess. So I'll get us straight into the questions. So firstly, just for our fans mainly, just want to give us an overview of how things have been going for Everton over the past few seasons. Obviously, Leeds have been out of the Premier League for a couple of years, so I want to know how things are going up in Merseyside for you.
Yeah, so since our last interactions with you guys, we have improved our points tally from 4 and then from 4 to 8. So it's a bit of a difference. So you'd look at that on paper and see that as a steady kind of progress, but this is Everton that we're talking about. So, of course, there's a lot of drama involved in that, especially with the ownership. Very, very close to John Textor, very, very close to 777, especially. They were almost coming in, and that was a very worrying time. Things are looking a bit more positive now. During that period, we had Sean Dyche, obviously, and that's it's the football that you kind of expect. It's 4-4, 4-4-1-1. It's stable, it's compact. And there's not a lot going on. So we had relatively decent phases throughout that. But towards the end, I think there was a big divide in what the Friedkin Group, who have recently just bought Everton, I think there was a big difference between what they wanted to do and what Sean Dyche thought that he could deliver for them. And that has led to the changes that have been made. And most importantly, Everton left Goodison Park in a non-embarrassing fashion, which wasn't it wasn't a guarantee, to be honest with you. So, overall, I think the morale around the club is a little bit better, even though pre-season games haven't been sensational for us. But it's definitely an interesting time for Everton after a few years of really, really struggling as a football club.
Well, that's good to hear that you're on the up. That's always a good thing. Everton are one of the solid clubs, and we wouldn't want anything bad to happen to them. So it's very good to see that you're doing well at the moment. So obviously, the current manager, David Moyes. How are the fan base feeling about having him back in charge?
Well, I think admittedly, I was quite a big Sean Dyche defender, even towards the end. I personally didn't see the transition between Sean Dyche and David Moyes, even though we had David Moyes managing us for such a long time. I mean, that's my entire childhood was basically this eternal figure just in there sitting on the Goodison bench. I didn't see that transition as being too drastic, but that changed towards the end of the season. And I think with us moving to a new stadium, moving towards new ambitions, I think it was really, really important for David Moyes to finish the season, for Everton to finish the season on a really, really good run of form. And that's what we was able to achieve. Relegation wasn't really on people's minds when it was coming towards April, May time, which, as I said, we've had 2 or 3 seasons where it's gone up to relatively close. So I'm glad that hasn't happened. And as I say, it was really, really important for David Moyes to build momentum going into the summer. So I think you ask the average Everton fan and they're pretty delighted for him to be back on the bench again. It's also important that he's had that redemption arc, let's put it, at West Ham, where he could prove that he could still build a club from being, let's call it, a mess.
Fair.
Yeah, to a mess into back into Europe and into much more successful. Yeah, things are looking a little bit better.
I figured that would be the case. Someone who the Everton fan base know and they know what he's about. So it was I can see that being a stabilising element to the club. So that's good to see. Good to see. So how are you feeling about the season ahead? Where would you be happy, or where would the fan base you think would be expecting to finish this season? Like, we're building on last season, you think?
Yeah, it's hard to know because we had the exact same. Well, I say the exact same. That the ambition for Sean Dyche's first proper season in charge was okay. We're gonna push on. We finished strongly. We made some relatively decent signings for a team on no budget, and we went into the first few games of the season and was really, really struggling. And the same for last season as well, where Everton were looking okay on paper. Their numbers were okay, but results were not coming in. And so we've kind of relived this situation before, but I think things are a little bit more stable for us now. But that isn't to say I'm expecting Everton to be pushing top 10, top 8, even though we've seen teams like Nottingham Forest, teams like Crystal Palace putting in really, really good seasons recently. I think you would argue, or you could make an argument that those two teams have had similar periods that we have had. So, yeah, but me personally, I'm not expecting us to be pushing major ground, but I think a more stable season where we're putting in more positive steps is feasible. It is feasible for Everton.
That's good to hear. So yeah, I thought so. You're expecting around mid-table? You'd low end table. That
if you offered me mid-table, I'd be pretty chuffed with that.
Yeah.
Which if you was telling me like when I was like 10 that the David Moyes team would finish 10th, I'd be like, no chance. That's outrageous. We should not be pushing for that. We've been like 5th or 6th, and now it's just like, give me comfortable mid-table fodder and I will take it every day of the week.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's how reflective of the Premier League in general, really, that mid-table is seen as an achievement with how tough the Premier League is now, with how much money there is in the league. And there's lots of clubs who have been consolidated in the league for a long time. So they've been able to build these mega squads and teams who maybe aren't historically Premier League side, like your Brighton, for example, how well they've managed to build over the past few years. And there's all these clubs which are challenging now for the European places. Who
definitely.
Historically haven't. So it's a tough league. It's a tough league.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely.
Yeah. So let's get into the actual details now. So can you talk to us about what you think Everton will look to do when they have possession of the ball? Is it the style of football who most fans familiar with David Moyes would expect?
Yeah, I would say so. We play in quite a very expansive kind of way, so you won't be seeing inverted fullbacks with David Moyes. You won't be seeing rondos in the middle of the pitch. You'd be seeing long balls into the wider areas. You'll be seeing like quite a lot of runners from deep trying to support a big man up front. These are things that you'd expect. I would say like a real big difference between us under Sean Dyche and us under David Moyes was that we was able to circulate the ball in a lot cleaner state. And one of the reasons for that is Jake O'Brien at right back was basically pushed into that area, and he doesn't really perform as you would expect a centre back to perform at right back. He kind of just lingers in a wide space, but he still enables Mikalenko on the other side to push forward a little bit more. And within these kind of phases, you will see James Garner or Idrissa Gueye from the centre of midfield. You will see them spread out into some areas, maybe making a third man run if one person's covering the other. So it is what you expect, but we are able to play a lot neater, I would say. And this leads to, don't get me wrong, this is it's not really that threatening when we're just circulating the ball around the middle third. But we do have players that can really, really get us territory. Iliman Ndiaye is probably the guy right now that is well established in the squad that can do that. If when he's playing on the left side, he's very, very good at kind of attracting a player to step out towards him. And when he cuts back inside, it does create a lot of, it's either he wiggles through the crowd, he might have one or two people to connect with either, but he's also got a wicked foot shot on him as well. So, yeah, it's not... Yeah, as I say, it's not super, super creative football, but when we do get the territory, that's when the set pieces come into the picture, and that's one thing that Everton have been really, really strong at, even under Sean Dyche and David Moyes as well, is that we've always registered really, really good set piece numbers. So that's kind of the aim of the game for Everton in possession. Let's win a free kick and then put it in the mixer, and we're usually quite organised in that fashion.
Yeah, that does track with what I know of Moyes, so that's good to know that I don't need to really get into it if nothing's drastically changed.
I wouldn't call it bread and butter football, because it's not what is bread and butter football, but it is what it says on the tin. It's still David Moyes. You have these odd patterns that you think, wow, they can do that? I didn't know they could do that. And it comes once in a blue moon, and that's it.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Sometimes you can overcomplicate things, and it's good to have these types of teams and managers who can do the simple things well, I think. And leading now into the out of possession stuff. So when the opponent has the ball, what kind of pressing structures are we seeing under Moyes?
Yeah, so this is once again what it says on the tin kind of stuff with David Moyes. But I think there are some relatively interesting ways that Everton kind of trigger their press. So for the time being, you'll see Everton more in a mid-block. We'll be in a 4-4-1-1. Moyes did try out a back five for a couple of games in pre-season, but these principles are still relatively the same. So once there's a back pass towards a centre-back or the goalkeeper, that's when the team starts to counter-press in a bit more of a cautious manner. And it's also worth noting that, like, if you're playing with a back three, you will see the wingers step up more, but their task is more to man mark a fullback that's pushing forward or wing back that's pushing forward. But this leads into pretty interesting situations, because you'll have phases where both of our wingers are super deep and our centre midfielders are pushing really, really high up the pitch. So you get these kind of weird phases where Everton look really, really narrow for some reason. Like, you'd see a lot of bodies in the centre, And one reason why that is because Idrissa Gueye likes to really, really jump quite often. And when he does this, you get the far-sided winger. He will basically cover him whilst he's doing this. So you'll have moments where Guye's pushing forward, and I mean, we've usually played Carlos Alcaraz on the right. You'll see Alcaraz come and drop in and cover that zone. And when Everton are in these positions, we are pretty strong at pushing a team to one side and keeping them there. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to win the ball back or we're entirely reliable within those situations. So I recently watched the Roma game that happened on Saturday. Yeah, it was Saturday. I watched that, and there was a couple of times where Roma were able to basically have a guy in the centre who was like, I think it was Manu Kone who was playing. He would essentially just dribble round Gueye, and then suddenly the structures really opened up, because we've gone into this real aggressive situation where our midfield is no longer compact. You're kind of got some man marking situations out wide, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, our entire middle's just randomly opened up. And there was occasions like, Roma's a Gasperini team now, so you can imagine, if you're familiar with Gasperini, it's like 3 or 4 dudes waiting on the wings. They've got a massive overload. So we were having situations like that, and even in some of we played some Premier League teams within our pre-season friendlies, and they was able to split the lines quite easily through us in these situations. So we'll get into what Everton have done in the transfer market, but I feel like one way we really, really need to elevate the team is to have a midfielder next to Gueye who can screen a lot better, that can cover that central zone a lot more as he steps up and as he presses, because there are times where Everton will open up, and if you've got a guy that is able to resist that pressure in midfield, then Everton is going to either fall back pretty quickly, or you'll get into situations where you're able to transition quite quickly, which is where Everton really look very, very vulnerable.
Okay, that's some interesting stuff there. That does get us some things to get into. So potentially dribblers in central areas could cause you problems, that kind of thing, would you say? Yeah,
I think so. And there's situations as well where James Garner's usually the person that's next to Gueye, which is, Idrissa Gana Gueye. It's just great to say. It just rolls off the tongue very, very well.
It's a nice name. It's a nice name.
You do get situations, though, where Garner kind of drops deep to man mark the guy who is the right-sided attacker. So, for example, when we was playing Manchester United, if the ball was on the left-hand side, you would see Garner drop off a little bit more, and he's man marking Bryan Mbeumo. And there's one really good example from this game, which Everton are in a deeper block by this point. We're kind of more in the medium block. And there's a real good example where Garner is marking Mbeumo. He tries to jump forward, but doesn't read where the ball's going to go. So what happens is the ball from, I think it's Lenny Yoro, it goes to pass towards Bruno Fernandes, and Fernandes is able to bypass both Idrissa Gueye and James Garner, which is not what you want. He does get a long shot out of it as well. So in all the preseason games that I've watched, there's been like a couple of phases where this has happened, and I don't think you can iron out that issue quite quickly. So that is one area that I think Leeds will be looking at and wanting to target.
That makes sense. That does make sense. So, like you mentioned about the transfer window, so what is the current state of the Everton squad? What work do you have left to do in the transfer window? You mentioned a screening midfielder there. Is there any other areas that you think you could do with improving?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting summer in general, because the guys that we've brought in, bear in mind from this current time of recording, Jack Grealish has not signed for Everton yet, but that is what is rumoured. But we've only brought in 5 guys, and 2 are basically nailed on to be getting regular minutes for Everton. We lost a lot of players going into this year. A lot of our loan signings posted at over 1,000 minutes, including a certain Jack Harrison. They were regulars until Mangala and Lindstrom got injured, and also some of the players that we got rid of, like out of contract, they were pretty nailed on Everton figures. Like Dominic Calvert-Lewin had been at the club for a long time, but physically he's declined for a couple of seasons, which is a big shame because I was a real big fan of him. But the biggest player or the most significant outgoing has been Doucouré, and the reason why that is because not just from the goals perspective, he's a great box presence. He can he had good phases on transition as well. If there's space to drive into, he's pretty reliable. It's not just that; it's also the high pressing stuff. So the stuff I was speaking about, Idrissa Gueye, a minute ago, Doucouré was the man who was essentially leading the press. He was the first guy to counter press out from that midfield, and it is significant that we've lost someone who is very good at doing that job. Maybe less so under Moyes, but certainly under Deitch, that was a prominent figure in the team. He's been replaced by Kieran Dewsbury-Hall, who I can foresee him partaking in that out of possession role. I can see him, whilst the striker's man marking someone, I can see him jumping onto the next person. But he's a very different profile in what Doucouré is going to do. So I trust like Dewsbury-Hall to do the short interchanges a lot more. He's very good at taking the ball from the middle third and leading transitional chances as well. So that's a pretty significant profile change from our point of view. I think people were kind of expecting us to get a Doucouré 2.0 or someone who can traditionally like really hold the ball up very well up front. But Everton haven't really gone down that line, which is pretty interesting because that's one thing you would kind of expect from David Moyes. You wouldn't really expect him to branch out a bit more, but maybe we are. The other guy that we've signed is Barry from Villarreal. He's definitely going to be a litmus test on the Everton dads that they want to see their striker score goals regularly, and the people that think he does quite well. He links up the play very well, and blah 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 blah. Yeah, I don't expect him to be a nailed on starter every week, at least for the foreseeable future. But he's got a very high ceiling, and we've seen some good sparks from him as well. We've seen some good link up play in the centre. Even against Roma, Barry and Dewsbury-Hall both started that game. They both created chances for each other, which is always a good sign. And even though Barry's got this quite unrefined carrying style, I would say, the dribbling style, he is still very effective. I feel he has had moments where he looks really good, and he's another player that you can trust to, if the ball breaks in our lower block or in the middle third, he's a player you can trust to get the ball forward, and that's really important for Everton. So we've made two real significant purchases on that front, but the team's crying out for another midfielder that can keep things more stable behind the guys that are doing the pressing triggers. And even though O'Brien's been a major positive, I think the team would need a right back that can overload, that can join the attack, that can overlap. To be fair, I understand why Everton's recruitment process has been trying to improve on 42 goals that we scored last year. I totally get that. And we have been linked to guys on the right as well. Tyler Dibling's been linked to us. I think that interest has died down now, but it's encouraging to see Everton being linked with these kind of players. And that's pretty good, but you also want a guy that if he's going to be cutting in on his left foot from the right-hand side, you want another guy overlapping to provide that attack as well. I think
absolutely,
that's... Yeah. And, Seamus Coleman, club legend. He's still at the club. He used to be able to do that, but he hasn't. And
it amazes me that he's still going.
We've replaced him like 5 times, and he's outlived all of them. He's still going, and I still expect him to still have some appearances at some point this year, because he's also still pretty sound defensively, at least on some occasions. Yeah, so David Moyes has said it himself. He expected some more transfers by this point, but it hasn't really been the case. So I'm still expecting us to be a little bit busy until going towards the end of August as well.
That is common for, I think, most clubs in the league. I know we still have business that we've have left to do, and I think there's not many clubs who are finished. I don't think there is a single club, to be honest, that is fully finished. Even clubs like Chelsea, who sign 1 million players every window.
The Chelsea are never finished whatsoever. I'm expecting a call for me and you soon.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be pretty cool on a 8-year contract or whatever. Sign me up. Sign me up.
100%. So we've gone over some of the new guys you've got there, but of the squad as a whole, who would you say are the key players, the ones that will really get Moyes to get what he wants out of the squad, but in and out of possession?
So I know I've mentioned him quite a lot on this podcast. Idrissa Gueye is definitely the guy I would list, because he is the difference between Everton being able to set up in the middle third and get into these scenarios where we win the ball in your half, or it's the difference between Everton sitting more in the lower block for most of the game and having to try and counter-attack from very, very deep areas. He's definitely a major factor in how we play. And Ndiaye as well, because he's super reliable at taking the ball forward. Admittedly, he has moved into a lot more central areas in pre-season. I'm not really sure I'm entirely sold on that front, just because I think his real main game is that if you give him the space out wide, he's always going to attract people towards the ball, and he's going to try and get past them, and he's pretty successful at doing that. So our attack runs through him, I would say. And I haven't really spoken much about the back line, but James Tarkowski's been a relatively sound defender for the club. Even, after things being so turmoil, it's generally quite impressive that we've been able to record top 6, top 5 defensive numbers in the league. And the centre-back pairing is a guy that was released by Burnley and a guy that we've actually nurtured during this period in Jared Branthwaite. We've generally nurtured him, and he's now an excellent centre-back himself. But I mentioned Tarkowski because he's able to do the aggressive side of the game really, really well in situations where he needs to step forward. He's very, very reliable on that front, and he's very, very good at defending his box as well. But one thing I will say, my assessment on centre-backs isn't really, really that amazing. But I always feel like someone, if they have a bad game once in a blue moon, you can really, really feel it. And Tarkowski does have those games once in a blue moon where you're like, what's happened to him? That's weird. He'd have a game where he would give, he gives away fouls, but some you're just like, why is he doing that? Or how has he got into that situation? And, even though I have those questions on the once in a rare occasion, it's still a good sign of someone who just quietly goes on and does their job pretty well. So he's a guy that I really appreciate, but also is someone that is important into how we're able to defend and where we're going to win the ball back. He is very, very important.
All right, so a bit of a wild card there. So he'll sometimes be really good and sometimes have some what you do in moments, like you said. But that's an interesting little quirk.
It's definitely one of those love-hate kind of relationships. But
I'm familiar.
Yeah.
Leeds have had plenty of players like that over the years. So I can definitely relate to what you're saying there.
Absolutely. Same here.
So moving more on to the actual matchup against Leeds, would you expect to see many changes to your usual style of play coming up against us? And if you want to ask any questions about how we look to set up, now would be a good moment as well.
To be fair, Moyes does have those kind of old tropes where if this was us playing at home, we'd have a little bit more of the ball circulating a little bit more. Away, I'm expecting us to remain in that mid block and be frustrating. But what I will say is that it's a pretty nice game for Leeds to come back to. It's one that you're going to get the ball. It's one where you're going to have situations where you're at now half pretty regularly, I should imagine. You know, it's. I think for a promoted team, it's one that you've been like, yeah, I quite fancy that for a first game at home, even though it's on a Monday night. You know,
it's not ideal. Yeah.
Poor scheduling on that front, but yeah, I'm expecting us to maybe, even though Barry and Dewsbury Hall both started against Roma, I'm expecting a kind of a classic Everton away day where it's we're going to start dropping off a little bit more, but then we'll have phases where we're able to counter attack and get the ball forward. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. And Leeds have obviously just been promoted, and so we're used to having the ball more. And I think by his nature, Daniel Farke does like to try to possess the ball wherever he can. He's just tried to be more of a front foot manager where he will want to try to possess the ball and camp in the opposition half where he can. That sometimes is to his detriment, and sometimes there could be some changes which could be made to that for us to sit back a little bit on some occasions and allow the opponent to have the ball.
Yeah.
But that isn't something he's always done. The odd occasion, like for example, in the season where Leicester went up and we just failed to do so, we did do some changes against Leicester because they were so good at keeping the ball under Maresca, so we were a bit more relaxed in that. But I'm kind of not expecting to see that in this game, especially with being at Elland Road, opening day of the season. I'd probably expect this to be quite typical Leeds from what we've been seeing in the Championship in the past few years, albeit with a slight change to our formation because we've changed from a 4-2-3-1 to more of a 4-3-3, and that speaks for the profiles that we've signed in midfield. We've brought in players like Anton Stach and Sean Longstaff, who are both known more as being eights, definitely in Longstaff's case, and Stach is probably as good as a 6 or an 8. So you'll have a tough midfield battle on the hands, I think, in this one, because you guys have got some pretty tough ones in midfield, and we do. So that's going to be an interesting area, I think, to keep an eye on for both clubs, see who wins that battle.
Yeah,
but yeah,
and for sure, it's those kind of games where I can foresee us like we would either have like space on the break to really get a lot more chances in, or it'll be one of those games where we are sitting back a little bit too much and we can't break out that very well. That's one thing that's quite that Moyes has really been looking for in the market, is a striker that is able to, you could really bounce off, in like a striker that you're able to rely on to get on the transition and carry the ball, but also one to lay it off to someone else. Like I said, I know Barry's a bit unrefined, but he's definitely better at doing that than what Beto is. Beto's a lot more, he'll come on the same side as the ball is, but will want to sprint behind the centre-back. Which, you know, Beto scored 8 goals last season. Yeah, he finished the season very, very strong. And the signings that we have made, I can see how they also would benefit him. But in situations like this, where maybe we're not going to be setting up so high, you want someone who's going to be linking the play a little bit more. And yes, Beto is very good at the running part. He's huge as well. So he does have moments, but he's very, very chaotic. He's a very chaotic striker. So you can't really guarantee him to keep the ball in a certain position and wait for those midfield runners to come forward. So yeah, I'm expecting a close game. I'm expecting a very, very tight game between us for sure.
Yeah, I am. So I don't expect anything different. But I think Moyes tends to keep games like that, especially away from home, so that would make sense. And do you have any notable injuries or suspensions ahead of this game?
The only major one is Mikolenko went off. He went off against Roma. He was holding his groin. This was in like the first half. I was listening to I watched the game, but I was listening to what the Everton commentators were having to say, and they was like, "Oh, this is not good. He's out. He's at 5 weeks. 5 weeks. He's definitely out for 5 weeks." So we haven't actually had any reports on that. So we'll see what that is. But he is a doubt for the time being. One of the other signings we have made is Adam Asnau from Bayern Munich, who looks a really, really exciting talent. He's another guy that you can rely on to beat one or two guys off for you, on that left-hand side. One thing I will say is that in that game against Roma, where he had like a solid 80 minutes, he was moving forward, but Roma had like one or two phases where the space was massively behind him and he wasn't really like recovering that position as much. So that is an area that Leeds can look to exploit. And there was, even when Mykolenko was playing, there were one or two phases where he would like basically join the press because Ndiaye was man marking the opposition fullback, or he would be marking maybe one of the inside midfielders, I should say. So whilst Everton are in super narrow positions, Mykolenko was stepping up, and Manchester United did this quite well actually. They was able to have a decent little combination, and the ball would go back on the right side, and Dorgu was behind Mykolenko on a good few occasions. So that left side is somewhere where we can get exploited as well. So even though the defensive numbers don't lie, we are very, very strong in that area, but there have been situations where Everton look a little bit suspect. Yeah. Positive things for you to go into this game for, I think.
Yeah, it will be definitely something we would look at. Our right side attacker is most likely to be Dan James, so it'd be a fair amount of pace to try to get into your left side. So we'll probably be looking for long balls when we win the ball and get him into space and get balls into the box. So yeah, that is something we could look to target.
Yeah, and if there's a guy between the lines that you've got, that's also pretty, for what I was mentioning earlier when trigger our press, if there's a guy between the lines waiting, there is area for him to potentially turn around and drive the ball forward. And if there's situations, a lot of teams look quite vulnerable when a line like the midfield line has been broken and there's an attack sprinting and the defense is backpedaling. Every team kind of looks vulnerable in those situations, but that is a position where I'm watching Everton and I'm like, oh, this is a bit interesting. So there's definitely
something
routes.
We'll keep an eye on. Good to see there is some chinks that we can hopefully look to get at. Could you give us the best guess at what your lineup will look like?
So I'm expecting us to still be in the 4-4-1-1. I mentioned we've played 5-4-1 in a couple of games, but I'm really, really not expecting that because that had been Dwight McNeil and Nathan Patterson, and Patterson's also a doubt for this game. But I don't expect either of them to really be. McNeil a bit more so, but I'm not expecting that change. So I'm still expecting the 4-4-1-1. Jordan Pickford in goal. I was a little bit when he first signed for us, I was a bit he was a bit rash. Didn't really look comfortable, but now he's been one of the main reasons that we've stayed up over these last few seasons, and it is very, very impressive we've been able to keep hold of him in this time period. So Pickford in goal, O'Brien at right back, Tarkowski, Branthwaite. That three's pretty much settled. There was a little bit of a doubt of Branthwaite because he didn't travel to America in pre-season, but he did play against Roma, so I'm expecting him to start here. Between Mykolenko and Asnau, it's a bit 50-50 because nothing's really been reported. I'd say Asnau for this game because I don't buy the way that it was described to me on Everton TV commentators. I was like, okay, I trust these guys. So I'll say Asnau for now. Go on, Gay. I'll let you decide if I said one name or two.
I like that.
So those two on the left, Ndiaye, Dewsbury Hall in the middle. Alcaraz has been the guy more on the right. I don't really like him in that position, but Moyes has been starting him in that position because when the ball's on the left, he comes into like quite central areas. So I'm expecting him to play, and I'm expecting Beto up front just because there are situations that I can see Beto getting into. So, and plus it is a relatively Moyes trope not to trust people too early, even though I know I've just mentioned Dewsbury Hall, but yeah, I'm expecting Beto. So that's what my best guess is.
Okay, thank you for that. And just so I can return the favour, I expect our lineup to look very, very similar to what the last game out against AC Milan was, which was our new keeper Perry in goal. If he's back from injury, Jayden Bogle will be at right back. If not, it will either be Isaac Schmidt or Sam Byram at right back. Most likely Schmidt if Bogle isn't available. Then the centre-backs will probably be Pascal Struijk and Joe Rodon. Left-back will be our new player again, Goodmanson. Midfield will be, I'd have to say, Ampadu, Stark and Tanaka, I would say, because we're at home, so we'll want more of a technician in there. Then the wide players will be Dan James on the right and probably Nyonto on the left. Then up front, probably going to be Joel Peru, although I would personally prefer Lucas Nemecha because he's a bit more of a working centre forward, and I don't rate Joel Peru's physical attributes for the Premier League. A fantastic finisher, but he's not the most physical of centre forwards. So I'd want a bit more physicality in this game against the Moyes side personally, but it'll be Joel Peru. But yeah, just in case you watch now. But the final question, we don't ask for predictions, but what I will ask is, where do you think this game will be won or lost?
Well, I'm expecting like a nice cagey, quite uncomfortable game to watch from a viewing perspective. But when games get into these kind of situations, it is, I know it is cliched, but it is what your midfield can do, and that is very, very true in the way that we play. It is very, very true in these situations. So I can see Leeds having a lot of time on the ball, getting into quite high positions, but I can also see us getting chances on the break too. So, a classic Premier League game for your welcome return. Nice,
probably a
horrible
1-0. Yeah, I was expecting that. So it's either going to be a tight 1-0 or a 1-1 or a 0-0.
Yeah, nice, low scoring, welcome return. You know, whatever the result, no one's happy, and we go to bed. You know, that's what I'm expecting.
Beautiful. What else could you want from your Monday's football?
But if anything, it's Sky's fault. You know.
Yeah, definitely is.
Don't put the blame on any of the coaches here, but blame it on the scheduling, because no one likes Mondays at all.
No, much prefer it on the Saturday.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
It's been great having you on again. I know you've been on before.
Yeah,
and last time was in the Premier League.
My first podcast experience was here. So I've always got time. Yeah, admittedly, I haven't really done that many podcasts, but like I've always got time for you guys. Absolutely. So when I saw Leeds were getting promoted, I was like, "Oh, that's a nice one for me." I'm expecting a little message at some point. So, yeah, an absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure being back on.
Well, you came highly recommended from John McKenzie. So he was a guy who said to get in touch with you. So
yeah,
yes,
appreciate the love from him. Appreciate the love.
Yeah, he's a lovely guy. So thank you very much for joining us. Where can our listeners find your content?
So I am quite a regular writer on Between the Posts, which is we basically do like tactical match reports across all of the big 5 leagues for those that are unfamiliar. So over the last 2 years, I've covered a lot more Serie A football, but there has been a dash of Premier League games in there. I am covering this game for the website, so you will be able to get a full tactical match report from me. I will aim to publish that on the Tuesday morning of the game. So that is the best place to find me, or you can look up at me on Twitter at Jolazzo. It's like Golazzo,
with Joel.
But Joel, and not as much charisma. But yeah, that's the best place to find me. And yeah, that's all.
Perfect.
That's all.
Thank you again for joining us, Joel.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Great. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Sorry to interrupt, just a quick one. If you're enjoying the video, be sure to like and subscribe to help us keep the content coming. And if you want even more, you can support us over on patreon.com/ASAW Patreon. You'll get bonus podcasts, exclusive articles, and access to our Discord community, all while helping us make more of the content you love. Thanks. Now let's get back to it.
Good stuff from Joel there. That was really nice. We've had him on before, I think, haven't we? Years back. Hopefully we can do lots more of these this season. Some of you asked for this. I had some DMs about this last year and wanted us to get more on. It's so much harder in the Championship. People don't want to do analysis of the Championship teams, so we'll get more on this year for sure. Hopefully most, not all, but most teams we get someone on for.
I don't know when Martin messaged him, but it sounded like he'd been sat at his computer waiting for him to DM him as well for that interview.
No, I messaged him like a week before. I spoke to him, but yeah, I know he was eager to come on because it was his first podcast appearance, with us, which I didn't realise before interviewing him. So yeah, he's a really good guest. He's Joel, and he knows what he's talking about. So I hope you all enjoyed that interview.
Doesn't sound very Scouse though. I will say that. I've no issue with that, by the way, Joel, if you are listening. Anyway, let's talk about what he said then. Martin, I think you wanted to talk about some aspects of spacing. That's what you've got down on this running order here. So hit me with that.
Yeah, so Joel mentioned a few bits about the midfield lines pressing, pushing up too aggressively at times, and I think that could be potential for there being some space between the midfield line and the defensive line. And he also said that some direct dribblers have had joy getting into those areas. So I think if we can have that as an instruction to our central players to try to carry through lines of pressure when Everton are looking to press, like Joel said, I don't think they'll be as aggressive in this game at Elland Road as what they would be at the new Everton Stadium. I don't know what the new Everton Stadium's called. Has it got a name?
I should know. I've typed it before, but I've forgotten.
It's like Harrison Dickinson or something like that.
Yes, it is something like that.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I'll just say the new Everton Stadium for now. But yeah,
Bramley, I think Bramley Dock as well is kind of one which is okay because it's down on that dock.
Okay, that'll do. So yeah, so I think they'll be less aggressive with being at Elland Road than at their grounds, and so that those spaces might not be there, but there could be some moments where they do look to press aggressively, maybe in the opening stage of the game, and potentially the opening stage of the second half as well. Maybe look to try to unsettle us a bit to disrupt our rhythm. But I would largely expect them to be maybe not passive, but more of the mid-block kind of stuff, which Joel mentioned there. Recede into more of a low block as we get through the lines. But it is definitely something that interested me when he was speaking about it, that there could be areas where we can look to get into with dribbles, and we saw Stach had some joy with getting forward and carrying against AC Milan, so it's potential that's sort of thing he could do. I think he would be pretty difficult to stop when he is carrying the ball. He keeps the ball quite close from when he does, and he's obviously a massive unit, so it's a difficult guy to get off the ball when he's got a bit of pace behind him. So I think that is something that we should definitely try to focus on. I'm not quite sure who else other than Stark could do that job. Potentially a Brendan Aronson, but then he'd carry it into the space and then just shit the bed. So maybe not. But yeah, that's just something I wanted to talk about. I'm not sure if you two had anything which you wanted to discuss about it.
You didn't mention Ilya Gruev there, with his shitty boxers that he carries around with him. Him carrying through lines of pressure, I could see that. Anyway, go on, Hosty.
I think there's more of the, if Rodon carries past that first line of the press and then he's got a bit of space just to carry into, I think that we could see that maybe a few times.
Yeah, I'd agree. I've not got too much to add. I think the way he talked up how aggressive they were out of possession was a bit surprising to me, but I agree with you, Martin. I'm not sure they will be quite so aggressive here at Elland Road that they would be at I want to say Goodison, but I keep forgetting. The other place, the new place. So yeah, you're probably right. Shall we talk about players then, and who else we quite like? He discussed quite a few. I want to go first on one, which is Tieno Barry, because I may or may not have mentioned on the bonus pods, he was my pick for striker this year for us, and I was really hoping we would get him. But he's gone to them. I don't actually think we were ever linked, but I could see us being interested. And I'm annoyed that Everton got him because I really like him. I think he's really fun. And I think he's going to become a superstar eventually, if not straight away. And I could see, like he said, that front two with him and Dewsbury Hall probably working quite nicely, to be fair. So that's annoying. They've also got quite a lot of fun dribblers, that has to be said too, and not just in Dye. But also they've got Grealish now and Alcaraz, so a lot of players that are capable in that respect. But yeah, Hosty, you talked to me about some players that you quite like from this Everton team. I'm looking at the squad right now. There's got to be a few that you like there.
Yeah, I absolutely love James Tarkowski. It's Ndiaye. I think he's really good. He was probably their best output last season. One of the players who really carried them. He's obviously quite creative and has a really good output to him. But I think that's maybe kind of like the side that we can probably get down as well because of that. I'm not quite sure where he stands defensively. He's probably the one which I like most out of there. I did used to like O'Brien as well, but it's a centre back, so I won't talk about centre backs.
We love talking about Pascal on this podcast, but yes, You're right. I can't believe as well, somewhat of an Englishman, because I know you try to be Irish as well. You've not mentioned England's number one as one of your favourite players.
No, that's because he's got really short arms.
Yeah, but I can't think of many players genuinely at all in world football that have given me more fond memories than Jordan Pickford, to be honest, in the last decade.
He's given fond memories for England, but like for Everton, to be fair, he's been key for them. He's kept them up. Like a couple of those years under Dyche, he really kept them up. But yeah, as a goalkeepers union, I do like Pickford, but I didn't want that to be the player that I spoke about. Really,
no,
I just think I didn't want to touch on a goalkeeper either. But yeah, that's going to be one of the challenges for us, right? In this game, it's going to be getting past Pickford, who is England's number one at the moment. Probably wouldn't have been if we'll see what Trafford ends up doing this year now. But yeah, if he turns up, like he probably will. I feel like for Leeds, he will. Leeds at home feels like it's the perfect. Well, for us at home, Leeds away, sort of like it seems the perfect game for Pickford to kind of get riled up and turn up, kind of like in the way that Ramsdale used to rile himself up. Except Pickford doesn't quite attack the fans as much. But yeah, no, Pickford's really good, and the best way to get around him is actually like shots from distance and to the opposite side of wherever you're at because of that short arm thing. Because he doesn't get across his goal as quick as most of the goalkeepers.
Yeah, totally agree with that. But he is fantastic. Like there aren't many goalkeepers in the bottom half better. He's one of their best players in my opinion, and from not just a technical perspective in terms of how good he is, but also just mentality-wise, one of the leaders of that team. Someone we talked earlier in the summer about goalkeepers, and we were saying, you want someone who, if they lose a game 3-4-0, they can pick themselves up the next one, and it doesn't matter. He's a bit of a mentality monster in that sense. He never seems to dip for too long. He's one of the most consistent goalkeepers in the Premier League, really, in recent years, and an absolutely insane pickup for Everton because they've had him in goal now for about 7 or 8 seasons in a row, haven't they? So, yeah, he's had a really long career there. Really, really good player. Martin, anyone you like?
Yeah, they've got quite a few nice players of Everton. I do want to shout out Ndiaye as same as Hosty. He's really good. Can beat off multiple players if you give him the chance. And yeah, that he was one who caught my eye when I've actually been watching Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He caught my eye in that game multiple times. He's got really good feet. He can change direction really quickly. He's an intense presser as well. So it seemed like a perfect fit for a Moyes winger, and he's got end product as well. He was their top scorer last season. So yeah, he's definitely someone to watch out for. Kiernan Dewsbury Hall is another player who I very much like. Very progressive guy. Obviously, we know him from his time in the Championship more. picked up by Chelsea and now being picked up. Is it on loan
No,
from
it's
Chelsea?
permanently.
No, permanent one. That's a very good deal for Everton. Everton is at. It's a good age and will definitely do a lot for them. I think both in terms of progressing the ball and by scoring as well, because he scores quite a few, likes to cross the box well. And then in bit deeper areas, they've got a really, really strong midfield, like James Garner and Idrissa Gana-Gueye. That's a really solid midfield pair. Garner's got really good passing range. He's got really nice long balls, and that's something which is key for Everton, is to get those long balls direct to the wingers so they can do damage or up to the target man. So he's really good for his distribution, and Gueye is really strong, really quick. He's also not bad technically as well. He's just really good all-round midfielder, is Gueye. So yeah, they've got a lot. I don't know a whole lot about some of the other players. Obviously, Branthwaite is a fantastic centre-back, but he's not going to be available for this game, I believe. So that is very good stuff. I think Joel was expecting him to be available because he played one in the pre-season game, but I think he's picked up an injury in training
Hamstring this week,
since
yeah.
then.
Yeah.
So that's a very good one for us, because that does mean that there's potential for Michael Keane to play instead, which is definitely in our favour. Michael Keane isn't as quick as he once was. Well, he never was quick, even in his prime. But yeah, it's a pretty lumbering centre-half pair between Tarkowski and Keane. So yeah, that's a good area of the pitch for us, unless O'Brien plays there. But if O'Brien plays there, then it's most likely going to be Seamus Coleman at right back. So yeah, him being injured does cause some issues for this game for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I'll give Mykolenko a little shout out. I didn't really think much of him when he first joined the Premier League, but he's become a pretty solid left back. Reasonable on the ball and a reasonable enough defender, actually. I think he's a bit underrated. There's not much else. I was going to give Garner a shout out, and I couldn't believe that he didn't really get a shout out from Joel, because I know that they want another midfielder, and I can see why, because Gueye's age as well is like 35. But Garner is a really nice footballer, and also one of their main set piece takers if he's on the pitch too. And they've got quite a few of those, because they've got Dewsbury Hall, who's left-footed. They've got McNeil, who's left-footed if he plays, and then Dye, who's right-footed. They've got 2 right and 2 left that are pretty good. So they've got some options there to hit, and some big players, even if you have to play a player like Michael Keane. It's another player with a lot of added height. So it's going to be land of the Giants this game for quite a lot of it, to be fair, even without us having Jacobi ourselves, our star centre-back, when they're missing theirs. But yeah, Garner's lovely. I've liked him for years, to be honest. He was a really nice player on loan at Forest, and then Everton bought him, and he's been a pretty good servant for them since joining from Man United. And yeah, there's not much else. There's a few technical players in the final third. Harrison Armstrong was nice last season on loan at Derby, but maybe it's a season too soon for him. He'll go out on loan. And I don't know how much Grealish will play. And we were linked with Beto. There you go. So they've got options. I think the striking options are actually quite good, to be fair. They've got a few different ways they can do that. So Everton's squad is in good shape, as we said on our 1 to 20 pod, myself, Will, and Toldo. So if you haven't heard that, go listen to it. But yeah, the lineup, just to remind you of what Joel said. Well, there's been a couple of things recently. There's potentially an injury to Mykolenko, and there's definitely an injury to Branthwaite, which means, as Martin has got this down, and I think I agree with this, probably going to be Pickford in goal, O'Brien at right back, with Keane and Tarkowski at centre back, with the new boy, he's only 18, from Bayern Munich, Adam Asnou, at left back. It's probably going to be Alcaraz on the right, with Ndiaye on the left, Garner and Gueye in the middle, Keane and Dewsbury Hall as a 10 behind Beto. I think that role suits Dewsbury Hall as well, by the way. So that's probably the most likely, but there is a chance, as you said, Martin, that Coleman has to play at right back, and O'Brien is actually the centre back. By the way, O'Brien is like 6'6".
There's a chance as well, probably, that McNeil starts instead of Alcaraz, I'd imagine.
Yeah, that's also true.
Yeah.
Probably a slightly stronger player out of possession, slightly less flair. But again, that set piece, right? He's got a lovely left foot as McNeil when you give him a bit of time to use it. And then we normally do stat stuff here, so I'm just going to give this aspect a shout out more than actually cover it. There's nothing to go off. We'd be going off last season's data, which we could, but it's a split between Moyes and Deitch. So what's the point? There's not really that much point. Their underlying numbers weren't amazing last season. The defensive ones were okay, but their actual kind of goals conceded, as Joel said, they were sort of bottom 5 or 6 in the league for that. So really, really good. They didn't score a lot. I think they were either the second lowest scorers or the third lowest scorers in the league or something like that last season. So not particularly great. So yeah, I think that's everything, unless one of you has something to say.
Nothing from me.
All good. I know that they're obviously strong on set pieces as well from data. That goes without saying. Something which my sides have been strong at for quite a long time.
And Deitch.
Yeah, exactly. So they pack their sides with big physical guys and they know what they're doing when it comes to planning set pieces. So that will definitely be an area which could cause us problems, but we'll get into that in the next section more, I think.
Great stuff.